Ahí va a llegar el gol del Arsenal. Ozil. Marca Mesut Ozil.
Lacazette found a bit of room. Back towards Pepe. In goes Nelson. In goes the ball. Arsenal's pressure is made to count.
This is Arsecast Extra.
Hello and welcome to another Arsecast Extra, normally with James from Gunnerblog, but not today. James is away, so I'm delighted to welcome back as my co-host to talk about the 1-0 win over Leeds, Tayo Popoola. Hi, Tayo.
Hello, mate. Off the bench, always ready. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. James is away. Arsenal have won a couple of games and kept clean sheets in both. Does this suggest that a magpie flew into his rectum? I can't say with any certainty, but I'm pretty sure that that's what the results are telling us.
Listen, the runes are always the runes are never wrong. And when James goes away, when James hurts himself, he hasn't hurt himself badly for a while, has he?
No,
I mean, nobody wants that, but everybody wants that. So, but yeah, 2 clean sheets. Who could have thunk it?
Yeah, it's quite the step forward. How is the new year treating you so far?
Yeah, it's good. Just like slightly back to school with work and stuff. 2 Arsenal matches inside, 2 home matches inside the first week is unusual, and as is not drinking a skinful afterwards. With all that New Year January stuff. So it's not quite a sort of a dry January, but then there's less need to souse myself because the results have picked up.
Yeah, you're not having to seek solace in the bottle because of Arsenal doing things on the pitch which drive you literally to drink.
It does happen though, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, we've had some of our kind of funniest moments out of some of the despair this season. You know, the bit in the pub is always the good bit, but now it's still fun. It's still fun, Andrew, but I can remember it the next day.
That could be considered a good thing, you know, in many ways, in many aspects.
Especially if you're doing the Arsecast the next day, so it's quite good to remember the game before.
Yes,
to talk about it.
Yeah, that's true. I tend to watch key moments again and pretend like I remember exactly what's happened. That's the way.
Do you know what? You're not the only person in this game who does that. Basically, I always love it when someone like sort of sounds like they've just pulled a stat out the air. I think Arteta's first game as captain was actually against Leeds. It's like, dude, we've all seen Orbinho the day before. Don't worry.
Yeah. Okay. I've been guilty of that once or twice, but you know.
Me too.
We've all been that soldier. So FA Cup third round against Leeds United brought back some memories. Of course, we posted your Thierry Henry Return of the King thing yesterday, which provides memories of that goal that he scored in another 1-0 win back in 2012.
Yeah.
The amount of tweets I got from people who got very emotional listening to that, it's like not simply a great memory, but they're actually in tears listening to people talk about a goal that I guess they can visualize so well, because it really is perhaps the most iconic goal to be scored at the Emirates. I mean, there have been some brilliant goals. You think about the scorpion kick, you think about Jack Wilshere against whoever that was, Norwich, thank you, lives long and fresh in my memory, obviously. But that one I think really does speak to people because of all that came with it.
Absolutely. I remember it like it was yesterday, which is fortunate. I actually watched it loads, obviously, over the last few days while I was putting together that kind of director's cut, and actually ended up focusing more than anything on the touch that gets it out of his feet. It's incredible. It's incredible. But it was a real moment of, for a start, I'm glad I was there. I managed to miss I wasn't in the stadium for the scorpion kick. I wasn't in the stadium for Jack Wilshere's goal. And I wasn't in the stadium for the first, perhaps, iconic moment in the stadium, which was Thierry's header against United, from Ebere's cross. So I missed all of those.
Where were you?
It's nice to be... What? Snowboarding for 2 of them, and no excuse. I know. Spot the Arsenal fan. Yeah, no, I snowboarding for 2 of them. I can't remember where I was for the 3rd one.
Reading The Guardian, probably.
Yeah. But it was an incredible moment, and I absolutely understand those emotions. Obviously I got the same kind of messages, which was fantastic. I remember very vividly Keith Dover, who I sit with at the Arsenal, like absolutely up in tears at that. It was the perfect storm of emotions, hero moment, like you said on that podcast that I've just done. You said it was necessary, right? It was 0-0 at the time. It mattered, and for him to come back like that, as Ian Wright said, like the all-time hero, to do that at that time is sensational. And it's something that's really, in a time where we've all been quite fractured, it is something that was such a collective moment that was ours, that is an Arsenal moment. And it's good that it still resonates. Yeah. And the reaction to the pitch, the reaction to your post yesterday was fantastic. And I'm very grateful for that. Yeah.
So look, if you haven't heard it, haven't listened to it, it's on the Arseblog podcast feed. It's called Return of the King. There's an extended version. So do check that out if you want to, enjoy something and also cry at the same time, which is sort of like when you look at the end of the Christmas biscuits and you go, I can't waste them, but I'm so fat right now.
Can I actually, Andrew, it's with real regret. I remember when a lot of fans kindly gave their time, yourself, Hayley Wright, and Amy Lawrence, and so many more people on there. I won't go through them all. I remember saying to myself, I'm going to do another one of these soon with Andrew, and then I'll get to speak to Dave Faber, Dave Goonaholic. And I made another show recently where we were talking about Arsenal and Man United, and we couldn't get our times right. And if anything, just that this extended version kind of thing was like, it made me think of him and just how fleeting things are, really, because it was something that we were always going to do next, and I didn't get the chance to do that. And I was definitely, kind of thinking of him. So, just a moment for Dave there, basically. And this version is not much, but it's Arsenal related, and it's all I've got.
All right. Well, I think that's lovely enough for him, and obviously he's a very well and fondly remembered Arsenal fan. As some artwork on the way to the stadium last night showed from North Banksy, which is pretty awesome. So we all remember Dave very well, and he will have remembered that goal very well, and he would have enjoyed last night, I think, also a 1-0 win to the Arsenal, a classic scoreline. Let's talk a little bit about the game, because that's why we're here, and the team selection. And I thought perhaps Arteta might go a little bit more rotatey when it came to picking his team, because the players have put in a big effort against Bournemouth, against Chelsea, against United. The squad is a bit thin, so I thought he might try and just rest a few legs here and there. But there were a couple of little changes, but not anything major. Aubameyang was left out, Torreira was left out to give them a bit of a breather because they've done Trojan work. But you still had the likes of Luiz, Ozil, Lacazette, Pepe was in there, Kolasinac in there, having played through the pain against Manchester United. Xhaka was in there, Sokratis playing at right back. I mean, what a shift he put in there. It became clear to me after about can you hear the dog noises there?
Oh yeah.
That's Lana getting very, very excited about going out. She gets quite wound up. But anyway, not to take away from my point, Leeds are obviously a very, very good side. Very well managed, well organised, well drilled. Bielsa is somebody Arteta knows extremely well. It was obvious after a while that they're top of the championship. We're struggling a bit in mid-table, and he wanted as much experience in there as he could get.
Yeah, I mean, it was a strong team. The most surprising, especially because of what you just said about the shift put in, and we saw the stats about how far Ozil ran against United in particular. he was the most surprising one. I mean, you could argue that Lacazette kind of needs minutes at the moment for confidence, if anything. More of that later. And you could say the same for Pepe having a good run at home against a side nominally, although as was proved, nominally inferior to us, although that clearly wasn't the case. And I think, as per your tweet, when we saw the team news at first, you assumed it was a back three with maybe Reiss Nelson doing what Saka's done over the other side, perhaps. But yeah, we were very, obviously we were very wrong about that. It was 4 at the back, and Arteta clearly didn't underestimate Leeds with damn good reason, because they were fantastic, and certainly in that first half, if they'd had any kind of cutting edge, I thought Patrick Bamford was better than that. But anyway, that's my. If they'd had more of a cutting edge, then we would have been in a lot of trouble. So I was glad it was a strong team. I was glad to see that we were taking a home tie in the FA Cup seriously. I think it makes absolute sense so early into Arteta's reign that he is taking these games seriously. I mean, imagine if we'd gone out limply when we're trying to build momentum at the moment. He's talked so much about trying to build this thing with the fans. You don't do that if you put out a piss poor side in the third round on TV. So it felt right for the occasion, but that first 45 minutes obviously was a huge surprise.
Yeah, look, we have to thank Emi Martinez, I think, because he made some very good saves, and not the first time this season that an Arsenal goalkeeper has been an important part of, I was going to say keeping a clean sheet, but we haven't done too many of those, but he was certainly that yesterday. He was by far the busier goalkeeper. Leeds hit the bar. And they played some really nice football as well. But it was clear that if Arteta didn't underestimate Leeds, perhaps the players did a little bit, in the sense that we'll talk about what happened at halftime now in a second, but he said very specifically afterwards, he said, I wasn't happy at all with how we started the game, how we approached the game. I tried to convince them before the game of what to expect of that team. They battered every team in the Championship every 3 days. And what was interesting was I watched Reiss Nelson on the BBC afterwards, and he said, they were very good in the first half. We didn't expect that. And I was thinking, well, hang on, I said, there's some mixed messaging going on here. But it felt maybe a little bit like the players themselves. There was another interesting bit actually on BBC where Arteta said about, the interviewer said to him, what have you learned about your players since you took over? And he said, well, I've learned how they can react to a defeat, and I've learned, this is what he said, I've learned how they react when they win just one game. I thought that was quite an interesting little comment, as if sort of the United game was done, we've done a good thing, now we can rest a little bit. But that's not what's required, or not certainly not what Arteta is going to let happen.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I thought of it more, rather like the fans who on dry January, had their first pint before the game yesterday, right? Old habits kind of die hard. And I think we went into, it felt more like we'd reverted to type. And this is what Arteta's talked about being a huge issue. And obviously we saw at half time, when he got his hands on them or got his voice on them, then we could kind of go back to the way that he wanted them to. We've been conditioned to play like this. We've been conditioned for our heads to go down ever since. And I know you feel quite strongly about what Xhaka said after the Watford game, for example. But that, I think, this season has been the default mentality, right? So when a team comes at us as skillfully, and the pressing and the man marking of Leeds in the first half was exemplary, really. I think they got. They kind of went in on themselves. There were free kicks that were going backwards, like we've seen. There was, Martinez made some great saves, but his distribution was really poor last night. And I think each incident at the back, Holding was very jittery at the back, understandably so, of course. But I I think there were jitters, and they kind of went into a shell. They pulled themselves close and kind of played very, very inhibited in an inhibited fashion. So I think it was more fear than complacency. It was more a case of what the club has become used to this season, with the kind of very, very super cautious approach that we were sadly getting used to under Emery. So I think it was more that. I don't think, obviously, we all saw how Guendouzi and Xhaka kind of weren't functioning together. Everything took a little bit longer. Throw-ins took a little bit longer.
Yeah.
From the goalkeeper took a little bit longer. It's really, really noticeable. Certainly in the stadium. I'm sure it was on TV, but there's a pace that we've got used to doing things at when things are going well, when we've seen other teams playing well, and we weren't doing it. There was that hesitancy more than anything. So I think it was that, not to take away from, because I was so impressed with how Leeds were playing, marshalled on, by Bielsa and their millions of, they had about five people in the technical area, it seemed, like, rotating. So yeah, super impressed with Leeds for that. So yeah, as I say, anyway, I've rumbled on, but I think it was more a case of fear, and then hold on, they can play, and then safety first more than anything, which we're not very good at, as we showed that yesterday as well. And as I say, if they've been able to punish us with the final ball, with the final strike, a bit more, then it might have been beyond us.
Might have been, but obviously halftime came, and there was a very obvious turnaround after the break. Alexandre Lacazette was asked, what did Arteta say at halftime? He said he shouted a lot. I don't know that Arteta was that impressed when it was put to him that's what was said. But actually, we have some very exclusive audio footage here of what exactly went on in the Arsenal dressing room at half, which sparked that turnaround. I'm going to play it for you right here.
Because you've had two good performances and you think, I'm fucking 30 big bollocks tonight. I'll fucking play her I like. But you won't play you like, because if you play you like, I'll fucking stick the youth team. So you little cunt, when I tell you to do something, and you fucking big cunt, when I tell you to do something, do it. And if you come back at me, we'll have a fucking right sort out here. And you can pair up if you like, and you can fucking pick someone else to help you, and you can bring your fucking dinner. Because by the time I'm finished with you, you'll fucking need it. Do you fucking hear what I'm saying or not?
I mean, it's hard not to be inspired.
Do you reckon Arteta's got his own version of the hairdryer, given the fact that his hair doesn't move? So it's probably like a really, really bristling hairdryer. He's doing it on the standards of his own kind of Lego hair.
Maybe
if I can move mine. No, look, I mean, but that's what you want, isn't it? Not the kind of up and at 'em approach. Not the shouting for no reason, but very tactically so. Basically, I mean, we sit on the halfway line, quite low down. We've more got the opposition bench in front of us on our side, so it's quite hard to see past Bielsa's head, which deserves its own postcode. It's enormous for that enormous brain of his.
The David Dunn of managers.
Oh my God, it's incredible. It's like I love him. But anyway, the point of that was to say that we're quite close to Arteta, so we can see him. And obviously, in these early stages, apart from me trying to work out what trainers he's wearing, I was also concentrating on him and his exhortations, and he never stops, rather like his mentor. So if he was taking that anger, but also that direction back into the second half, they certainly responded to that. So that's what you want to see. You're not shouting for shouting's sake. Anger that his kind of instructions weren't being followed, but then he carried that on when he, in the second half, and was like pulling them over to the corner when we're trying to pen Leeds in, and was furious at times when Martinez didn't go long when he said he should. It was great to see management, right?
In-game management, yeah. I mean, I think what's really interesting about this is that I had sort of half expected, maybe it's something I'm conditioned to after Emery, is I'd half expected a halftime change because things were so poor. I was going, well, how is he going to How is he going to address the problem that we have with Leeds? And there wasn't any real tactical shift in the second half, but what there was very much a physical change in the way that we approach the game. He talked about winning duels, about winning your 50-50s, about getting to the second ball, about winning tackles. And from the very start of the second half, that's what we did. We were more front-footed. We played higher up the pitch. You know, we won the ball back. We drove at them. You know, people, I know, sometimes take issue with the intangibles in a game of football because you can't always truly measure work rate and endeavor and those kind of things. I mean, you can see it in certain stats, but you can also see when a team changes its mentality and changes the way that it tries to play the game. So tactically, not a great deal change, but physically, in terms of the effort and in terms of what we did and where we tried to play the game, that's what brought about the turnaround.
Absolutely. And then it comes back to the application from, you've had a bollocking from the manager. Exactly the same players are on the pitch, but the same players are doing that bit more because they've had the rocket up them. I mean, there was one moment I think where David Luiz again kind of drew the ire of Arteta on the side, either with a misplaced pass. I can't remember what it was, but excuse me. And it's a new manager, and we are always looking at these things, but. He turned to he apologized to the team. He turned to Arteta and held his hands up in the universal footballer sorry gesture. But he turned to the manager to do it during the game. And, we've seen many times, and you always see when a manager's on the way out kind of thing, or at least players ignoring the managers. And he sort of turned and apologized to Arteta as if like what happened to turn and kind of sort of show some contrition to the manager during the game, and it just made me think that they're trying to impress him. They're trying to adopt his ideas, and they were still carrying the bollocking they got at half time. Xhaka was a different player after the break. Still think him and Guendouzi struggled a bit, but certainly less so in the second half. Guendouzi obviously got forward and got a chance off. We were popping the ball a bit quicker. The change. I mean, I don't think Leeds had I don't know if it's rose-tinted spectacles, but I don't think Leeds really had a serious look in until the match-saving, at least in his head, match-saving tackle from Sokratis later.
He fucking loved that, didn't he? I mean, he absolutely loved it. He this was not long after the ructions that took place down on the right-hand side. And is there a finer sight in football than a 6'2", 14-stone central defender with his head down like a charging bull heading towards an annoying matador, and he's got the ball at his feet and he's showing actually a little bit of skill on the ball, dragging it with him, but basically he's going to use his shoulders and his neck to make progress up the field like some kind of rampaging Jonah Lomu type figure, and then at the end of it to sort of sit on the ground hanging onto the leg of somebody else, and I actually love that. I know he's been a bit indifferent this season, but, there was just so much to like about that. And then moments later to be in the right position at right back to keep pace with the guy and make the tackle in the box, which then cannoned off the bloke out for a goal kick. I mean, that was like sticking one in the top corner for him.
Oh, yeah. So did they show that on the TV, or did they show it at the time? Like him just absolutely... Yeah, he's in front of the Leeds fans, right?
Yeah, Rob Holding was right there. So he just kind of did this, yes, with Holding, who was like, what the fuck is going on here?
Sokratis is the kind of player that you've got time for in a winning team. I mean, it was fun last night because we won, right? Do you know what I mean? He's funny. He's a bit of a mess. He'll throw himself at everything. In a winning situation, it becomes fun. It's a bit weird about how you've just talked about, this strong, bullish ox of a character, bullish ox, you know what I mean? But Christ, he likes to go down, doesn't he? And
He
hold
does.
various parts of himself. Yeah, there was the first part in the second half. There's in the first half where hilariously, it made me think of EPMD. You got to chill when he just turns to the crowd and he just does a calm down. Did they show that?
Yeah, they were talking about that on the TV.
Like,
Goes over a throw in and people are like, oh, get on with it. And he's like,
he's like,
hang
calm
on,
down.
I'm
and
fucking
then meanwhile,
knackered.
in the second half on the other side, the very picture of not calming down is this guy over the other side like that. So, I mean, he improved as the game went on. Obviously, he's got the recovery pace, which is clearly why he was given that position in the first place.
Yeah.
And when the play was, obviously when the play's over the other side, then he can tuck in and it becomes almost like three, it's three at the back. He's not the answer, but for a day like yesterday and for a tackle like that yesterday, then great stuff, basically.
Yeah. So, look, our goal came after, I'd say, a period of concerted pressure in which we had some chances. Pepe had a shot which went over. There was a Lacazette free kick. There was a Lacazette shot which he put pretty much straight at the keeper, and I think he probably should have scored that. A Lacazette in form in front of goal would score that, I think, from that position. He's really, really struggling when it comes to putting the ball in the back of the net. In fairness to him, he worked his hole off yesterday. I think you probably need a bit more than hard work from a centre forward, but in the absence of goals and in the context of yesterday's game, we've got to give him that. He really did put a shift in. I think there was a Guendouzi effort which went not far wide. And the goal itself, not the prettiest goal that we'll ever score, not up there with Jack Wilshere against Norwich or the Scorpion kick or anything like that. But to me, there's a kind of simple beauty to that goal because it came against a team like Leeds, and regular listeners will know that I'm not a big fan of Leeds, having had issues with them in my school days. They played very well in the first half. They probably should have scored at least one goal. They didn't. We scored a miss-kick goal, which came because one of their defenders made an intervention in the box. Reiss Nelson miskicked it. We went on to win the game with that goal and fucking march on home together, you fuckers. There's something of, I love...
What do you really mean, Andrew?
Yeah, I know. Look, we all want us to play really well and be a great cohesive attacking football team that scores beautiful goals. But sometimes you've got to win a game with a scrappy, scabby, fucking shithousey goal. And that's what we did yesterday. And I thoroughly enjoyed that.
But look, there was something nice about it as well because Reiss Nelson was there. And,
yes, and Pepe made a great run, didn't he? Drove the ball on very well.
I'm not comparing it at all, and I'll say that again. I'm really not comparing him at all. But that kind of ball, Sterling scores a lot of goals by being there like that. We saw it ourselves. We had our own guy like that, Robert Pires. Just make that run.
Yeah, make that run.
Comes across the keeper. If he doesn't palm it out. And you get a tap in, you're in the right place. So, you're sure the execution wasn't perfect at all, but Reiss Nelson made that run, and a moment for Pepe as well, who had a really strong game yesterday. He's got that really. I love it. I said it before. I love a street footballer. I lose my mind over look away passes, and I love a little languid. He's got this way of he rolls the ball under his foot. Sometimes holds onto it a little bit too long, but like he he glides up the pitch. He doesn't look like he's ever. I can't ever imagine him hitting top speed. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Well, clearly he is. So he's got that kind of languid way about him. But it was his ball in, wasn't it?
He took the ball, turned in midfield, drove down, gave it outside to Lacazette, who played it back inside towards Pepe, but the defender stuck a foot out and it came to Nelson at the back post.
But they were in the right place, basically, which it's to take it for granted, but there's so many of those times. It hasn't been happening this season. We haven't been breaking like that. We haven't had the energy or the optimism to get in those positions. And it was great for him. Was it his first goal yesterday? We were trying to remember.
Second goal, I think his second, because he scored in I think he scored against Nottingham Forest.
Right,
in the
okay.
EFL Cup. I could look this up and then just say, actually, I think I definitely haven't seen Orbino's tweet on this, but no, I think he did score in the Carling Cup or the Carabao Cup earlier.
Gotcha. He had a great chance. Was it before that or was it after that where he ran? It was before. And I mean, we saw a little bit of Lacazette yesterday as well, where there's a confidence thing. You know, when people chop it back like that, then you know that there's a slight confidence issue, isn't it? Because when you're really in your cups, then you're banging that beforehand, right? I mean, we saw Xhaka drive forward a few times, and you could see that he was just waiting for the foul. He's like, I'm a comfort.
There's a brilliant one actually. When Lacazette takes the free kick that clips off the bar, Xhaka brings the ball forward and he's just sort of waiting for the contact, goes down very obviously to win the free kick, and there's a reverse TV angle of Xhaka's face when he gets up and he's just sort of laughing at the Leeds players going like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do?
Yeah, so I mean, the rehabilitation of Granit Xhaka, at least the temporary rehabilitation, not some, most of all for him. Basically, there's a connection with, there's a connection with the manager, and he's coaxing what we need out of him. Whatever happens at the end of the season happens, but I'm all for him actually staying around in January, to be honest, just because. I don't think we're in a position with 1 in, 1 out at the moment. I don't think there's much behind a very meagre midfield in the reserves anyway. So if you can coax decent performances out of decent players, then let's keep them. Yeah,
let's just talk quickly about Reiss Nelson, because young players have come through at Arsenal, and young players have come through the academy, and he was one who was, extremely highly rated, went to Hoffenheim, scored a load of goals early on. It didn't quite work out for him in the second half of that season in Germany, but his reputation among the academy players was probably the highest. He was the one that people would have expected to make the breakthrough, and I think he started a couple of the early games this season. He started in the first 2 games, I think. But he sort of fell away, and Joe Willock made an impact, and Martinelli came in and was sensational, and Bukayo Saka has come in, and I'm not saying Nelson was forgotten, but he seemed to become a bit peripheral under Emery. But since Arteta has arrived, he started 4 of the 5 games, and I include the Everton game in that. I know Freddie was in charge, but that was when Arteta had joined the club and been announced as the new manager. He came on as a sub against Manchester United, with half an hour to play. We're 2-0 up. He's clearly somebody who Arteta sees as the kind of player who he can work with, who will carry out the instructions that he wants a player in that position to do. He's sort of like a fresh clay, if you like, that he can mold him, because he's not anything specific yet. He can mold him into precisely what he wants him to be. Yeah, of the crop, as it were, of the crop of youngsters who've been around the team this season, he's the one that I'm the most excited about. I mean, he's got... we all have pace. Change your boots, by the way, so you can stand up for 90 minutes. But that aside, he's exciting, and there is something. I mentioned Sterling earlier on, and maybe it's just the style and the silhouette. But if that's a decent player to aim for in terms of how he plays, where he plays, the pace he's got, the skills he's got. That's something to kind of aspire to, really. And it's also easier, I think, and I think that's why Saka kind of did quite well for a little bit as well, and perhaps why Smith Rowe and Willock have struggled a little bit. It's easier to make that impression, and we all used to laugh back in the day when Arsene would start everybody on the left wing or on the wing, right? But that's where you put an exciting youngster where they've got room to grow and make mistakes at the same time without hopefully not costing the team the game. And so I think in terms of position as well, I think that's why we'll have a good chance of seeing. It's easier to keep him involved in the squad. Do you see what I mean?
For that reason, I think he'll probably do the best out of the crop that season. I mean, Smith Rowe looks like he could do with a decent loan spell. Willock has I wouldn't say he's I think he's too close to the first team at the moment. And has been through no fault of his own. And there's certainly something there. And when Freddie was playing them all, like especially Everton, obviously when Ozil was injured, stroking the doghouse anyway, there's 2 games in a row where Freddie had played at Smith Rowe in that place. And we'd had 2 very distinctive breakaways where and again, it's not a criticism, when Smith Rowe played the wrong passes or Willock had played the wrong pass. Yeah. And I just remember very clearly a break. You needed someone that you need Ozil, you need someone who knows what they're doing in that position to play the final ball on the counter attack, right? Yeah. And much as though we can talk about passion and youngsters and giving them their chance and stuff, there's also that last % of quality which you're only going to get through,
playing regularly,
playing regularly in your star players, and so they're not there yet. Reiss Nelson won't have that problem because he's out on the wing. So yeah, he's the most exciting for me.
Well, look, it's hard not to look at the squad and feel confident that Arteta can get more out of most of these players, because that's exactly what he's done in a very short period of time. I know it's still very, very early in the Arteta era, but the positive impact that he's had, on the players, on the fans, on the club as a whole, really is remarkable. And maybe it speaks to kind of how far we fell and how poor and how bad things were, that, it feels like he's turned things in the right direction. Not say he's turned things around completely, obviously, but, we feel like, and certainly I feel like, we are going in the right direction.
Absolutely, because... And it is just, you said maybe it's a sign of how far we fell, but the shoulders down again, it was awful, right? And it feels like a new manager has come in and it's beginning to, because we didn't get that with Freddie. I feel like we wasted a month of the season through no fault of Freddie's. He wasn't given any coaching staff, and it all came on very quickly. The board, as you've discussed, could have done it in international break. We've done all of that, but it just does feel like what you want is people responding to a new manager. And much as though we all loathe them, right? But watching when we got beat the other week by Chelsea, and if you speak to any of your Chelsea friends, if you've got any, this season, they're like, don't care, we got Frank, right? You see that connection. You see that connection with Klopp and Liverpool. You see that connection, obviously, with a club, with a club legend, with Frank Lampard and Chelsea. Arteta feels like one of ours to a degree. And I was behind enemy lines yesterday. Andrew. Yeah. Right. As you know, well, as some may know, I make podcasts. I make podcasts for The Athletic. And I was making one I was a stand-in producer yesterday for the Tottenham podcast because the regular producer was away. So they asked me to do it.
Sorry, I'm just thinking, that famous story of Paul Kay, who is Dennis Pennis, and who is an actor many people will know as a big Arsenal fan as well, that, as a graphic designer in his previous life, apparently photoshopped like a tiny little Arsenal shirt into some Tottenham documentation. It could have been something, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was something along those lines, where if you looked really closely, on the front cover of the Tottenham programme was like a little Arsenal shirt or something like that. So I just have visions of you like somehow in the background subliminally adding audio like, Spurs are shit, Spurs are
Henri Chance goal.
Yeah.
Henri Chance goal.
1961.
Kind of thing. Yeah. 1961. Well, it was a good time to do the podcast because they're because they're happily being shit again. They're fretting about the fact that Mourinho is being Mourinho again, Harry's hamstrings. It was mentioned off before the record that they're not excited anymore, or they wish that they could have a club legend to come back, and they were trying to work out who it would be. But I said, unless you're going to get Teddy Sheringham back off a beach in Marbella, then there's no one really you can think of who's going to come back. And
Vinny Samways.
Vinny Samways. But the point is that they've got this feeling at the moment. They're looking at what, obviously the results aren't there, but they're looking at the people who I was with yesterday anyway, we're looking at Arsenal and saying, we wish we had something like that. So, and we're getting the benefits of that as well. Just one more thing, Angie, you just reminded me talking about Paul Kay. My one bit for the cause, I saw Christian Eriksen before Christmas, maybe about November. I saw Christian Eriksen on Marylebone High Street. He was with his girlfriend and a child pushing a pram, I think it was. Anyway, I saw him.
The child was pushing a pram. That's a strong kid.
Maybe it was Eriksen dressed as a child. I'm not sure. But anyway, so I saw him. So I went up to him, shook his hand and said, "Thanks for everything you've done. All us Spurs fans won't begrudge you leaving." So thank you for everything you've done for us. He looks a little bit perplexed. So maybe I overdid the enthusiasm. But if he does leave in this window, then it's not quite James and the Magpies. But I'd just like to think that I've played a small part in hopefully his 20 million transfer to Inter Milan this month. So watch this space.
Well, we will of course give you all due credit when that happens, and when Tottenham appoint the managerial dream team of Maurizio Taricco and Mido. That will be the day. We'll have fun times. What a dream. What a dream that would be for us anyway. Anything else you want to talk about regarding last night before we go into part 2 and take some questions?
No, I'm good. I'm ready for I'm ready for the hashtag Arsecast Extra.
All right, let's do that. We'll be right back with your questions and more in part 2 right after this. Welcome back to the Arsecast Extra. This is part 2 of the show where we answer questions that you've sent to us on Twitter at DJ Tayo and at Arseblog. On the Arseblog Facebook page, facebook.com/the Arseblog, and also on the Arseblog Discord server, which you get access to if you are an Arseblog member on Patreon. I'm going to start with a question from Facebook, which ties into a question that I have from Twitter as well. And of course, I've lost the question that I have on Facebook. Oh, it comes from Valerie Galvin, who says, how long do you think it will take Danny Murphy to get over the trauma of Arsenal winning last night? Judging by his hilarious co-commentary on the BBC, quite some time. Hashtag prayers for Danny. And also there was a question on Twitter from Duncan, who's at Hozho4, who says, what did you make of Xhaka's shithousery performance? Aside from pissing Murphy off, an obvious positive, I thought the first half showcased the frustrating side of his shithousery. Pointless fouls in dangerous areas, and the second half was shithousery as an art form.
Well, I mean, I obviously missed Danny Murphy's commentary because I was at the game yesterday. I saw him on the side of the pitch with Alex Scott. That was it. In terms of Xhaka and his shithousery, I can't really celebrate it like that. He doesn't feel like the dastardly villain in the way that Sokratis does, and maybe because Sokratis actually looks like the kind of generic kind of AI character in like GTA or something, doesn't he? You know, the guy who sort of he does, doesn't he? He's like got if you were going to draw man
draw a baddie.
Exactly, with stubble. So for that, I mean, Xhaka just needs to. I didn't really notice it from a shithousery point of view. I think he's still trying to kind of get his game together. He's not very good at being a shithouse because he's quite violent and
there's no subtlety to it.
No, there's no shithousery is an art form, which, you know, the fact, you know, every time David Luiz when there's someone coming, the way David Luiz pushes someone in the back every time the ball's coming to him, that's the kind of shithousery that I'm all for. The kind of more blatant grabs that Xhaka does, which really frustrate you. I mean, he gave away a terrible free kick on the edge of the box yesterday, didn't he, as well?
Did he? I know he gave away... Oh, yeah, that was the slidey one, yeah. He did a slide.
And there's... I mean, he's somewhere between... If David Luiz is at the right end of the shithouse scale and Xhaka's at the other end, Xhaka's in the middle, somewhere at the other end is Kolasinac with his... just the way he straight arms players in the back every single time. He could have been sent off against United for it, couldn't he?
Yeah, there was one. He made a foul against United, which was exactly the same foul that he got booked for. I thought it was a little bit harsh, but I guess it was because the guy who was going, it was where it was. He was going towards goal, but he does that. He just sort of puts his arm in front of him and then just uses his considerable bulk to send the person flying.
Right. So we need to get smarter at it. We need to get better at the tactical fouls have been creeping in, which, I'm still reeling from the genius of Man City when they came. It's watching it close up. It is an absolute fucking art form, basically. And so we're way off that, and Xhaka needs to get some subtlety into it as well. Yeah,
that's what was annoying Danny Murphy, though. That was what was kind of great about it. That's why I think people are slightly enthused by it, because it was typically Xhaka. It was a bit clumsy. There were a couple where, he very deliberately made the foul, and I guess, by his own standards, was lucky not to get at least booked, because he does tend to be somebody who, when he commits a foul like that, gets booked because the referee goes, oh yeah, of course, it's you doing that thing you do. Here's a yellow card. So on the TV, Danny Murphy was getting increasingly exasperated by the fact that Xhaka was not getting booked for fouls. And then he was exasperated by Xhaka actually winning fouls when, he'd drive forward, wait for the contact and go over. He didn't like that very much either. So it was quite enjoyable to hear him come off the wrong side. He wasn't losing it, but you could tell there was one moment where I think Xhaka made a foul over. It was probably like his fourth foul or something like that. And you just hear in the commentary, you just hear him go like, oh. And he didn't say anything because he obviously knew he'd said it like countless times, but just like, well, where he wanted to. He knew he wanted to, but he couldn't or didn't. So it was quite funny. So in that context, I think we can give Xhaka a pass. If he could introduce a modicum of subtlety to his fouling, that'd be good. Maybe that's something Arteta can work on. The same way that he works on, wingers and makes them, goal-scoring phenomenon. Maybe he could just make Xhaka a little bit more clever about how he makes his fouls.
Yeah, he was definitely helped by Anthony Taylor being quite slow to his pocket yesterday. At least because there was a few challenges from the Leeds lads, I think, as well, weren't there?
Yeah.
I've got one for you here from Ronak Parek, Ami Guna on Twitter. Who is the most improved player so far under Arteta out of the following? Torreira, Ainsley Maitland-Niles, Reiss Nelson, who we've talked about, Mesut Ozil, David Luiz, he's gone for the whole team, Laka, Xhaka, and number 8, any other player I'm missing. So he's got it covered. Yeah. I think we could have just done who is the most improved player under Arteta for you, Andrew.
I think based on what he produced so far this season, the difference between David Luiz now and David Luiz under Emery is remarkable.
Yeah.
I also have to think that that's probably not entirely a what's the word I'm looking for here? A good thing. Based on what he's doing and based on what he's producing, it feels a little bit like Luiz wasn't necessarily giving his best as, a 33-year-old player with plenty of experience. I'm not saying he was deliberately trying to be bad, but I just think if he didn't buy into what Emery was doing, it was just like, well, I'll just, I'll do what I want kind of stuff. So, on the basis that he was really, really bad for most of this season, the fact that he's been very good in the last few games is obvious, but I think it's a little bit of an indictment on Luiz himself. I would say there's two that really stand out for me. One is Lucas Torreira. I think that's an obvious fix because he's playing him in his best position. He's made the team more compact. That really suits Torreira. It's kind of a no-brainer, isn't it, to do what he did with Torreira? So it's very good that he's responded. But I think Maitland-Niles, this kind of fullback role that Arteta wants to play, where he acts as an auxiliary midfielder at times, really suits him. It really suits him. I think it suits his skill set. I think the door is open for him in terms of first team football at Arsenal, particularly as he, said earlier this season he didn't want to play fullback anymore. That's not what he wanted to do. He's come back into the team. I think he's been really good. I think there have been improvements across the board. I think Xhaka is better. All the players that he mentioned have been better, apart from maybe Lacazette, whose struggles continue. But I like the idea of him, Arteta that is, having a significant impact on young players, because the age profile of this squad suggests that if he can have that impact on them, then it really does augur well for the future. I mean, is there anyone else that's caught your eye?
No, I think you're bang on. Actually, we were talking about David Luiz in exactly the way that you just did there yesterday. So yes, there has been improvement, but it is as much an indictment on the player. I'm reading, or at least listening to Peter Crouch read his own book at the moment, and apart from being very funny, it's also just goes to show what a weird world it is as a footballer, and how they're kids and they need respect. As kids, they need to be told, and they need to respect the boss stroke the teacher. It is about being like in the classroom again, and Emery had lost that, and that's as much to do with but you can't imagine Gary Neville downing tools or letting his own personal game go. I only mention him just because I'm obsessed with Soccer Box. I love it. But and you watch him still, his face being so pained after a goal that he let in 1994. That was half his fault. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
It's brilliant to see. And there's a personal responsibility of him, Roy Keane, and players like that at their peak. And I'm mentioning them, and I apologise for that, when I could very much easily mention Sol Campbell and and Emmanuel Petit and any of our players who did the same. So there's that kind of indictment of Luiz, but also it is the question was improved players, so he comes into that. And as you said, Torreira, I agree for the reasons you've given there. So I can't think of anyone else.
It seems a bit not necessarily wrong, but you have to acknowledge that there has been an improvement individually and collectively. So it's a chicken and egg kind of situation? Is it because the collective is better that the individuals look better, or are the individuals doing more to make the collective better? It's hard to know exactly where to find that balance. But there hasn't been anybody, I think, who's disimproved, and even somebody like Kolasinac, who I've had doubts about, has been very good. The commitment he made to playing against Manchester United, despite being injured with that ankle injury, really speaks well of him as well. So, the Xhaka redemption we talked about,
Yeah, there's been some belief in, and this takes me on to a question. There's two questions here who mention him, if I may go again. Andrew. Phil the Greek 3 says, I want Pepe to do really well. I do, but I can't help feeling like he needs more time and space than he'll ever get in England. Most one-footed player since Nigel Winterburn. That's a bit harsh, I think. Do you think he has the right attitude to succeed here? And another one from Johan Koitzer. Johan Koitzer 93. Any thoughts on the excessive dribbling by Pepe and others in the first half? So I'm mentioning Pepe there, but I think he's actually been given his head. He's been entrusted by Arteta, and I think he's improving not only with game time but also with probably you get the feeling that he's been told that he's a match winner and go ahead and do that. And by the way, can he take a corner? Christ,
whoa, they're fucking unbelievable, aren't they?
Oh.
They were showing one of the corners. I can't remember which half it was in, but basically all the Arsenal players crowded round the near post and crowded round the goalkeeper, quite as they're entitled to do, because that's where Pepe's going to deliver the ball, and a bit of movement in there is going to cause havoc in the United box. And Arteta apparently is quite stringent is not the right word, but obsessive about set pieces. He was responsible for hiring a set piece coach at Manchester City. So this is an area in which he spends quite a bit of time and a bit of focus. And the United players obviously weren't necessarily happy with this. And De Gea, who the fuck were we playing? Leeds players. Jesus Christ. They weren't that happy with it. The goalkeeper was being crowded out. And the commentator on the BBC just sort of let out this exclamation. He goes, "This is not football." You think, what the fuck are you talking about? What are you talking about? This is nonsense. Do you
not remember anyone being around Almunia just because he...
Have you ever watched Stoke fling the ball from 60 yards into our area? What are you talking about? Okay, maybe it's not, your ideal vision of football as it's supposed to be played by Johan Cruyff. It's not Jack Wilshere against Norwich, as I keep referencing, but there are different ways to play the game and there are different ways to put pressure on the opposition. The fact that we've got somebody who can take a free kick like that or a corner like that lends itself to that kind of behaviour in their box, and I'm all for it. So, yes.
But do you think, going back to Phil DeGree's question, do you think Pepe's got what it takes to succeed in this country?
Yes, I think the talent is there. It's obvious. The talent is there. I think what we're going to have to do, and I think I mentioned this maybe last week with James, is repurpose him a little bit as a player, because he was somebody who thrived at Lille on the counter, and we're not going to be necessarily a counter-attacking team. So we've got to work with him to fit him into the structure that Arteta is putting in place. And I think that will take a bit of time, and it will take, a bit of adaptation for him. He's come into a team which was a shambles. Let's look at what's preceded where we are today. It was a shambles this season, an absolute fucking disaster. So I don't know how anybody is supposed to look good in that. And I also don't know how anyone is supposed to settle into English football, into a new country, into a new language, and all that kind of stuff when things are basically appalling, which they were. So I think we have to cut him some slack in that regard. I think the talent is there. I think the potential is there. Arteta is not the only one to say that he needs to work and he needs to learn. If that willingness is there on his part, absolutely. I think he can be a really, really important player for us. And at 24 years of age, when you look at the age profile of Aubameyang, Lacazette heading towards 30, Ozil, is 31 now, we have to look to someone like him to be part of our future. So it's still, I think he's very much an unpolished gem, an uncut gem, if you like. Have you seen that film, Uncut Gems?
No, should I?
It's mental, yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's Adam Sandler. It's crazy. But I think we've got to do a fair bit of polishing on Pepe. But I think there's some 24 carats beneath the surface.
Yeah, fair.
All right. I have a question for you from our Discord. It comes from Marty. I was going to say it comes from Marty today. I was thinking that's an interesting line, but I couldn't paste it, so it just tells me when the thing was posted. Marty today at 9:22. It's not Marty today. Anyway, Marty says, Rob Holding had quite a tough game and seemed to get some stick from fans. He had some weak moments with the ball, but with the press Leeds put on in the first half in combination with the time he's been out with injury, I feel a bit sorry for him. Thoughts on this? He did help keep a clean sheet, though.
Yeah, there was rust. Of course there was. He hasn't played very much football at all. So, but he did the things that, there were some things that he was very confident at. Obviously, the sort of meat and drink of a centre-half is going for the ball, going for headers, work well alongside Luiz. Distribution was very poor last night. There was 3 or 5 occasions where he just gave the ball away. But then again, that's someone not being kind of up to pace with the with the team and the new requirements of the team, really. So, look, it was a 90 minutes that he got through, so happy with that. And there's no need to kind of fear for him as a player. Glad 3 points weren't at stake. So, I mean, there is that. Well, look, we've got a problem at centre half, which we know. We have a problem at centre half who's thankfully nowhere near the team, even on FA Cup days, and will hopefully be gone soon. We have a problem there where I guess the next league game we'll see Sokratis and David Luiz in there, and you can kind of rest as easy as possible with that. Holding, I mean, we're seeing it with Bellerin as well. Like, I hope Holding doesn't have too much football between now and May for his own sake, really, and hopefully it will mean. Answer the question. Not really any worries. It was, worries in terms of distribution, but that feels more to me about getting the rhythm of the game back.
Yeah.
The things that he's supposed to do, defend, he did that pretty well yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things you would say is a strength of Rob Holding is his passing, his distribution. He's usually very good, very reliable on the ball. We have to, as you said, bear in mind that he's barely played any football for a year. I know he played a few games earlier in the season, but he spent another 2 months out injured. He is extremely rusty. I think Leeds as well were very difficult to play against in that first half. They pressed high. I don't know that there was the right amount of movement from Arsenal players ahead of him, which isn't to excuse the poor passing, but I think a couple of occasions, had we been a bit more switched on, those passes might not have looked as bad as they were if we'd protected the ball. I can think of one to Lacazette, actually. Maybe that was second half. I can't quite remember. But, it's about coming to the ball and making sure you get there before the opposition. So, look, he needed to play. He needed to get back in the team. It was an uncharacteristically sloppy display from him on the ball, but I think he did, in general, defend all right. And I suspect you can put that kind of profligacy in possession down to an off night, which any player can have, whether they're coming back from injury or not. So, give him some time, let him find some confidence again, and I think he'll be all right.
Fair enough. What have I got here for you? Matt Wall 89 is asking, will we celebrate St. Totteringham's Day this season?
Gosh, I don't even know how far behind them we are in the table. So they're on 30 points and we're on 27. So it's only 3 points.
Right.
I mean, it's not impossible, is it? I mean, Mourinho appears to be going full season 3 Mourinho within about 3 weeks of taking over.
He's gone early. It's week 3 Mourinho.
Yeah, he's throwing players under the bus. He's accusing them of being, spineless when it comes to injuries and all that kind of stuff. I mean, this could be glorious. If it continues at this kind of pace, basically the stadium will implode. There'll be a sinkhole where White Hart Lane was, and standing there just looking at the wreckage will be Jose Mourinho, because somehow he always manages to escape, so he can keep that up. I just think maybe we've got Europa League to contend with. Are they in the Champions League?
They're in the Champions League. Their star striker's out till March. From their point of view, as I said yesterday, they're worried about their midfield combinations. They're worried about Alderweireld and Vertonghen sort of forgetting that they used to be quite good. And
of course, Eriksen is going to Inter Milan, thanks to you.
And of course, Eriksen's thanks to me on his way to Italy. Look, we've kept 2 clean sheets and we're looking the right way. It may be beyond. I mean, it may be beyond us this season. I mean, I'm more concerned about Palace away. The next 2 games are the 2 teams above us. By the way, Palace and Sheffield United, swiftly followed by, I think, is it Chelsea? So we've got our own issues. But I think I think we could do. I think it'll be a very sweet one, given that a couple of weeks ago, I genuinely think that we had a very, if things stay as they are, even with Lundberg in charge, genuinely thought that we would have been battling to get to 40 points. And that might have just, I really did think that. The fact that we've had a bit of a bounce. I mean, that leads me on to my next question, actually, which is from Alexander Pavitt. And I remember being on here with you talking, and look, we do this as fans. We look for you look for the chink of light, and you look for positive vibes in, whether it was Emery's substitutions and so on. Before we get ahead of ourselves with St. Tottenham's Day, Alexander wants to know, is this another false dawn? We were excited by Emery at the start when he got us up for big games. Is this not the same thing?
I don't know. I just can't say. I mean, I can't, unfortunately, predict the future. Is this a false dawn? Look, it's a dawn. There's no question about that. Whether it's false or not remains to be seen. But is it better than it was? Yes, it was better than it was. Does it feel better than it was? Yes, it absolutely does. Do the players look like they know what they're doing now? Yes, it does. Do we have a manager who communicates clearly to the players, to the fans, via the media? Does he say the right things? Does he appear to do the right things? Yes, he does. Is it only 4 games? Yes, it also is. So I can't say that this is going to continue. But if you were to ask me, in the dying embers of Emery's fire, what are the things that you would want from a new manager when he's appointed? Basically, Arteta has done all of those things in the few short weeks that he has been in charge. So for me, I'm just encouraged and feeling positive about the direction. Whether we get to the final destination in the same mood, I honestly can't tell you. I wish I could, but I'm just encouraged, and I'm happier about where we are and what we're doing. And of course, there are grander concerns, aren't there? There are big questions about, if you want to go above, about the people who are rebel side of the club who allowed it to get that bad in the first place. Those are issues that we can worry about. But just in terms of what's happening on the pitch, Arteta appears to be doing, and how I personally feel when I listen to him, when I hear the things that he says, I feel very positive, and that's all I can give you on that question.
No, I mean, yeah, it was a question to get that kind of answer, I guess. I mean, I think the thing is as well, you got to remember, is that we're just so not used to this, and we're still. I mean, obviously, United fans had to do this a couple of years before us, but we're so not used to this. We're not used to what it's supposed to feel like with a manager bounce. We're not sure what it feels like when players in a season, unless you can remember. Bruce Rioch to Arsene Wenger transition super clearly. We're just not used to this. So this is all new territory to us. So you see a jolt, which, the way Emery was doing it for those big games, you get to see those substitutions and stuff, and something changed, something happened. We're just not used to stuff like that. So to see, normally see in a season from one month to the next where there's an absolute drastic change, because we were in such a bad state, all you can do is be encouraged by the signs. And is it a false dawn again? I don't think it is, because it cannot be it will not be worse than it was. It will not be. I'm sure that we've got different characters, different philosophies, and the communicating is massive here, I think. And I think the players will, we're obviously not going to win the league this season or probably next. But look, the players and the club, you can only hope will go in the right direction with the support, by the way, because he's doing what he's doing with the players that he's got there, with the support. And that, today's not the day because we've won 2 in a row, but the spotlight should not be removed from those above Mikel Arteta, who have made some piss poor decisions and will be called into, will be under scrutiny again in this month, certainly, and till the end of the season.
Yeah. And look, I think it's very obvious from talking to people and from what's going on that there has been a rebuilding of that connection between the fans and the team, and that's been so important. We know he's stressed that's something that he wanted to do, and I think he's done that, obviously with performances and with results, but also the way that he's asked his team to perform and to demonstrate their commitment to the cause. And they've done that. They were poor in the first half yesterday. They came back and they showed some character and turned that game around. So, as fans, what more can we ask for from a manager? We can ask more from those who are supporting him and those who are supposed to be giving him the tools with which to do his job. But from what he's producing, I think it's spot on. So. Okay, here's a question from Renz, who's at Gunnar Renz, and he said, do you think Guendouzi played well last night? I think he looked lethargic and he's still wanting to draw fouls, which slows our game. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'll agree with the question, really. I don't think he did. No one played well in the first half at all, and he did stand out, and I'm a bit confused. I'm a bit confused with Guendouzi again. I mean, we talked about we've been excited by him when he's at the start of the season when he looked like he'd kind of pushed on. I think he lost his way and didn't get any direction under Emery and has suffered a little bit. And he looks like he's young and he looks like he's having a bit of a dip. It's too early now to kind of call him in this new era. I don't think he worked very well with Xhaka, as I said yesterday. I don't think he makes the first team against or Sheffield United at the moment. And I'm a little bit confused with him at the moment. What he's trying to be. I do find it frustrating with the fouls as well. By the way that he does that. There's some good times to go down. Of course there is, but there's sometimes you want him to be kind of stronger and push through and release the ball a bit quicker. But like we started off talking about on the podcast, I think that's something general for the whole squad at the minute.
Yeah, I think he is a bit like Pepe in the sense that the talent and the potential is there, but he needs work on his game. I thought he was quite poor in the first half, but did make a couple of really good defensive interventions. There was one or two times he was in the right place at the right time, and I think in the second half he was a lot better. And I've been, not cold on Guendouzi, but just not quite willing to get on board the hype train. I think there's a player there. What I think is that in a team which demands structure, like Arteta's does, that's where he really needs work. I think it's his off-the-ball work, it's his awareness, it's his positioning, things like that, which require him to be a bit more disciplined. Where he's good is if the game is kind of fractured and open, and we need somebody to, run around. We need somebody to drive with the ball. I remember the big impact that he had on that Aston Villa game earlier in the season. I think he won the penalty. He might have won the free kick that we scored from. But what it required was somebody just to do something with the ball in kind of chaotic, frenetic circumstances. Whereas in Arteta's structure, you need your central midfield player. When the ball is here, he's got to be here. When the opposition have it there, he's got to be there. When we have possession, all these various things which come as part of a collective. And I'm not saying he's an individualist player, but I think that's kind of where he thrives at this moment in time. So I think that's kind of where Arteta's got to sort of take him aside and, as a former midfield player, really coach that side of the game into him.
I think that's bang on, actually. I think what you said about him thriving in chaos is the key, but that chaos comes from, that's the kind of thing that managers hate. That chaos comes from indiscipline all over the pitch and someone saying, fuck it, I'm going to have a go. And then you can get a short-term benefit from that. But Torreira's hopefully going to nail down that position. I'm not quite sure what Guendouzi is in a, like you say, in a structured team. You got to hope that Arteta is going to get hold of him and help make that decision for him.
Okay, I got a couple of quick ones to finish off.
One.
First one from Henry Powell, who's at AFC Henry P. I know the answer to this, but it sort of raises a wider question. It comes from, he says, will you be supporting Spurs and Jose against Liverpool to stop them bettering our unbeaten run?
I mean, no, but because no, it's just
the wider question then, of course, is about the unbeaten run. I'm reminded of
sure. I mean, obviously, yeah. So, no for the first one. Look, you got to hope Liverpool don't do it. Of course, you do for every single obvious reason. But I keep thinking that someone's gonna stop him. It's not something that I'm going to lose a massive amount of sleep over. I mean, I'm very controversially, and I don't want to go full talk sport about it, but the unbeaten season always. I just remember how desolate I was after the Wayne Bridge moment, and I know it was the same season, so that always kind of spoils things for me a little bit. It's not the record that it's not the thing I'm most proud of as an Arsenal fan. It's amazing, and I really, 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 really hope they don't do it. But ask me when they're on 48 games. ask me when 48 games. I'm hearing myself trying to sound reasonable and really growing up about it, but no, fuck it. You're right. Fuck off. Anyone beat them. Anyone, but not Spurs. Come on, let it be Sheffield United or what? Let it be Bournemouth away. Do you know what I mean?
Something scabby. Yeah.
Let's get that right. It takes us back to the days of wanting. Spurs to beat United the one time a season, and they never fucking did.
They never fucking did. Even when they were, wasn't there one game towards the end of the season?
3-0 down, 5-3.
Yeah, we needed them to win, and they sort of looked like they were going to do it, and then they just fucking Spursed it right up, the fuckers. Yeah. So yeah, in terms of that question, Henry, I'm reminded of the episode of The Simpsons where Homer runs for, he's the garbage man, and his slogan is, "Can't someone else do it?" So that's what we want when it comes to that one.
You're as good with The Simpsons as I am with The Wire. I couldn't tell you a thing about The Simpsons.
Well, there you go.
Give me 5 seconds and I'll work out a Wire reference.
Okay, let's see if you can get one in before the end of the show then. This one comes from John Hussein, who's on the Discord, who says, they seem to be changing the music at the ground. Back in black instead of House of Pain against Chelsea. A yellow ribbon last night. You both like music. Do you approve? You're there. You're inflicted with Sweet Caroline every time we win. So that's been once in the last few months.
I really enjoyed she wore a yellow ribbon last night, actually. House of Pain is the last refuge of the DJ Scoundrel, so I'm not a fan of that.
That and Moving On Up by M People. If you need to get people on the dance floor, that was always a tune which did.
Yeah, if you're really struggling. But so I can't... and obviously House of Pain's been massive in 93, spoilt by Keith Dover doing that kind of dance that he does, the guy I sit with, Keith, as a north of 50-year-old man kind of sort of doing kind of gang signs from Walthamstow, where he's from, kind of really has killed House of Pain for me. I'm very happy with no one can be happy with Sweet Caroline. It's got nothing, can we get back Curtis Mayfield, Move On Up?
Yeah.
So that was a positive tune. It was a good tune. It had a positive message. And we can kind of go out on that. Or, of course, with now we've got Mikel Arteta. We once tried to get Here Comes the Arteta going. Yeah, exactly. So if Aina Kamosi comes out when we beat, when we win our next home game, then I'll be happy with that. Right? Could be good. Could be good once.
Better than Sweet fucking Caroline, let me tell you.
Anything is better than that.
Anything is better than that. All right. Well, look, we'll see what the Arsenal DJ produces between now and the end of the season. Perhaps these, improved results, these rehabilitations will inspire him to dig deep into his record collection and find some tunes that people can actually get behind. Just remains for me to thank you, Tayo, for filling in for James so manfully, and it's been great to have you back on the show, so thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure. Nice to speak to you.
And thank you to all of you guys for listening. Your support on Patreon is very much appreciated as well. If you're not a member, you can sign up for just $5 a month. Patreon.com/Arseblog. We'll have an Arsecast later in the week looking ahead to the Palace game and lots more besides. Join us for that. Until then, take it easy. Cheers. Bye-bye.